Well, hello and welcome to another exciting edition of Adam's Music Box. And today I want to revisit the subject of audio mastering. And in particular, I want to react to a video that I thought was really interesting. It was posted 3 weeks ago, according to YouTube, and it was from the audio engineer and mixer Travis Ference, who goes by Progression's Success in the Music Industry here on YouTube. And his video was called Is Mastering Dead? I'm going to put a link to it down in the description below. And the premise of the video is that because mastering plugins and AI mastering and other tools are helping people that self produce and self record their own music to master the final product, whether it's a song, whether it's an album length project, whatever, that the mastering engineer as a dedicated craftsman might be going away, but that it really ought not to go away because the AI tools and the plugins are simplistic, built for loudness rather than quality, rather than emotional imbibing in the music, if you will. Now, um, I want to talk about the different techniques among great mastering engineers, the different styles, because the idea that there is only good mastering or bad mastering, while true, there's a lot more to it. And there are arguments all over the Steve Hoffman forum, which is a really interesting place for audiophiles, for engineers, and for crazy people. It's great fun. And I'll summarize some of the arguments a bit later, but let's first talk about these different styles of mastering. So I want to refer to the era of modern mastering, which really began in the era of multi-track recording. Because before multi-track recording, the mastering engineer was more of an umpire. Is everything going to be okay? Are the grooves going to be cut so that the average stylist can play them? Is the transfer going to be accurate? Is anything going to get screwed up? Is everything going to be clean? A very important role. And all of those things continued into the multi-track era. But multi-track recording made mastering even more important because as the sound got more jarbled, more layered, more complex, it meant that the mastering engineer's job was to make sure that potentially uncohesive and rough and ready mixes would be able to be cohesive, listenable, even, balanced, and ideally beautiful sounding to the audience, to the listener. So much more subjectivity came into things when you get multi-track recording, because something recorded in multi-track, unless you've got a mixing engineer that's the best person in the world, it's generally going to be a bit of a trade-off compared to, let's say, a 2 or 3 track recording that's much more easy to master in terms of making artistic decisions. Not always, but a lot of the time. And so different schools of thought emerged in this modern era of mastering. Let's start with the school of thought that says, I just want everything to be even and balanced. So let's say you get a master that was recorded from a multi track, mixed hastily. One song is louder than the other. One song, the vocals are too shrill, and let's say the bass or the keyboards are too faint in the mix. And your job is just to even everything out and make something that would be a bit of a chaotic or uncomfortable listening into something listenable. This is someone who's got a commercial mindset. Can I make something that only a college radio station listener would listen to? And can I make it FM radio friendly? Then we get into the engineers that really want to listen to a master recording and do something interesting with it. And I divide these people into 2 categories: the wet engineers and the dry engineers. Now, a wet engineer is someone who wants to make something sound as beautiful as possible. If he gets silver, he wants to wave his magic wand at the control console and turn it into gold. He wants to take something that's listenable and make it wowing. He wants to add that wow factor to it. And one of the engineers that I somewhat associate with this trend is Stan Ricker, and frankly, all of the mastering engineers that worked for Mobile Fidelity in the 70s and 80s. Because at that time, Mobile Fidelity mastered their records and later some of their earlier CDs in a way that made everything really glisten and glimmer. The bass was beautifully expansive. The treble was crystalline clear. Some people, however, criticize this as a smiley face technique that sacrificed mid range, that sucked out mid range at the expense of the brilliant highs and the warm, deep, occasionally booming lows. The results are subjective. I happen to love the stuff. I just think that it had a unique characteristic, and while it might not be authentic to the master tape, if you wanted something like that, you could always listen to the commercial pressing, which probably wasn't as good as the master tape, but MoFi, arguably with Stan Ricker and the others, made it better than the master tape. And again, this is not brick walling or compression. We're still in the analog era where compression didn't have the cold cutting nature that it did in the digital era, and where brick walling simply wasn't possible when we're working in the vinyl medium as the finished product. It was all about the EQing. And I think the choices, while not necessarily authentic, made for a very interesting listening experience. And some albums that were very lacking in bass or in treble definition really, really benefited from this treatment. And that's why people paid the big bucks, among other reasons. Quiet vinyl, you know, you're getting it from a master tape rather than a copy. That's why they paid the big bucks for MoFi. At the opposite end of this spectrum are the dry engineers, the ones who say, what can I do to create a record or later a CD or digital file that sounds as close to the master tape as possible? So that means if you've got a very warm master tape, you're going to get a warm record, CD, or file. If you've got a very bass shy master tape, you're probably going to get a bass shy end product. This is all about holding up a mirror to the master tape and giving it to the listener. And there's, of course, a lot of wisdom to this because it allows the listener, regardless of his or her sound system, to hear what the master tape sounded like. So if you've got $100,000 sound system, it's going to sound like the master tape would if played on a $100,000 sound system. If you've got a cheap little sound system, it will sound the way the master tape would sound if played on a cheap sound system. And one of the foremost engineers of this style was Steve Hoffman, the main man at DCC. You see the logo behind me. And later Audio Fidelity. He did a lot of work with sort of mainstream as opposed to audiophile releases with MCA. He did everything. Everyone knows Steve Hoffman. He's got the forum. He did a really interesting interview just a few days ago. You could add to this list, I think, Chris Bellman. Chris Bellman generally errs toward the drier side of things. That let's make it closer to the master tape. And then people in the middle, someone like Kevin Gray, who definitely is on the let's be more authentic to the master tape side, but will make some minor and tasteful EQ choices to make something listenable and balanced and rounded if the master tape is too harsh. Then there's someone like Bernie Grundman, who is slightly more towards the Stan Ricker category of sweetening things up. And then Bob Ludwig, I would put him definitely on the let's sweeten it up side as well. Doug Sax, I would put him, the late Doug Sax, on the sweetening side of things too. So if you've got your extremes, Stan Ricker on one side, let's sweeten the hell out of it. Steve Hoffman on the other, let's make it all as authentic as possible. You've got Bellman, more on the Hoffman side. Kevin Gray, generally on the Hoffman side, but more in the middle. Bernie Grundman, more on the Hoffman side, but more in the middle. And then you've got Bob Ludwig, more on the Stan Ricker side. Now, all of these people are geniuses. Some of them might resent my description of them. No harm is intended. But all of them have done important things. And in a perfect world, of course, where licensing and lawyers and money didn't exist, you'd have all of these people do the same record, and we would have, let's say, on a Tidal or a Qobuz playlist, or on a set of a vinyl in a box set, or SACDs in a box, you know, okay, here's the Bob Ludwig version of, let's say, Dark Side of the Moon, and here's a Steve Hoffman version, and here's a Stan Ricker version, and here's a Kevin Gray version, and here's a Chris Bellman version, and etc. But of course, we don't have that. Now, what does all of this prove? What does all of this mean? It means that mastering is an art where science is merely the vehicle to reach that artistic conclusion. There's no right or wrong way to master a record, unless we're talking about loudness wars and stuff that's intentionally designed to suck out the beauty from a recording. But even that, I suppose some people might say there's an art to that. The point is, what's right for Steve Hoffman or Stan Ricker or Bernie Drummond or whatever might be right or wrong for you, the listener. And so it really is an art, and it is subjective. Insofar as the AI world and the world of automation can kill art, it's not going to. It's certainly going to kill a lot of the trades and professions that are mechanical, that are based on following orders, that are based on simply getting from point A to point B. So anything that a human can do without using his or her creativity, a computer can generally do better without using its lack of creativity. But anything that requires subjectivity, nuance, artistry, passion, heart, soul, the human element is arguably going to become more important, because if you're 16 and you just want to get a poorly recorded album because you're a novice sounding as good as possible, by all means use the AI. You're not in a position to use a mastering engineer. You're a kid who's trying to make it. Good for you. Use all of the automation to your best ability, because when you're 16 and just want your guitar or your band or whatever to sound good, these are resources that are very important. But when it comes to people that have the luxury of creating art, you're always going to want your recording to be in the hands of a true artist. And that's what a mastering engineer has always been and always will be. When a lot of processes in any field get automated, the middle is going to fall out, because if mediocre can be replaced by a computer cheaper and faster, it will be. But this will actually make the true artist more valuable. Case in point, as music got more data compressed with MP3, what has that led to? It's led to a revival of the audiophile recording, because for $9 a month, maybe it's more now, I don't remember, or for free on YouTube or whatever, you can listen to bad MP3 music all the time. So there's no use anymore for mediocre stuff, because the MP3 is close enough to mediocre for most people to care. But for the people that really want the high quality stuff, the audiophile labels are having a great renaissance, because the rest is available, but that makes the best all the more valuable. And I think that's going to happen with mastering as well. Only time will tell. Like, subscribe, share to a friend, and we will see you next time. Take care.